They say if you want to know the truth, look at what gets banned, buried, or destroyed. And in 1933, inside New York's brand new Rockefeller Center, one of the most powerful families on earth did exactly that. They didn't just censor an artwork, they obliterated a masterpiece. The artist was Diego Rivera, one of the most celebrated muralists in the 20th century. And that mural? Man at the Crossroads, a massive and ambitious work that posed a powerful question: where is humanity headed? But Rivera didn't play it safe. He painted capitalism, communism, science, faith, nature, industry, all colliding on one wall. And at the heart of it, he included something that would ignite one of the most scandalous cultural clashes in American history: a portrait of Vladimir Lenin. Within weeks, Rockefeller Center, a temple of American capitalism, declared war on Rivera's art. And instead of letting the public decide its meaning, they destroyed it completely. So what was Rivera really saying? Why did the mural terrify the rich and powerful? And what truth was so dangerous it had to be erased from history? So this is the story of Man at the Crossroads. On the night of February 10th, 1934, under direct orders from the Rockefeller family, workers entered the lobby of Rockefeller Center, armed with scaffolding, hammers, and buckets of plaster. Rivera's bold, unfinished mural was still visible on the wall, towering, alive with images that celebrated science, labour, and even controversial political figures. But by morning, it was gone. Piece by piece, workers smashed the plaster with sledgehammers, scraping every trace of colour until nothing remained but a bare, white wall. This was not just the destruction of a painting, it was the silencing of an artist's voice. Rivera had dared to show humanity standing at a crossroads, with technology and industry offering two possible futures, one of progress, the other of oppression. But the Rockefellers, however, saw something else. Maybe a dangerous political statement, one that they refused to let live inside their building. The destruction of Man at the Crossroads actually represented far more than just an art world scandal. It was the systematic erasure of a prophetic vision that confronted issues of power, inequality, and the future of humanity. At the composition's heart stood a worker, not a capitalist or a politician, but an ordinary labourer, controlling the great machinery of civilization itself. Surrounding him were startling, precise images of scientific phenomena that would not be fully understood for decades. Rivera portrayed atomic particles in collision, cells dividing, and the hidden forces of biology and chemistry, all rendered with a clarity that seemed almost supernatural for 1933. For people at that time, this was not just artistic imagination, it was prophetic. The mural depicted what Rivera himself described as a giant hand emerging from space, holding a globe on which the dynamics of chemistry and biology, the recombination of atoms, and the division of a cell were represented schematically. In other words, Rivera placed humanity at the threshold of scientific revolutions such as genetics, nuclear physics, and molecular biology long before those fields entered mainstream understanding. So the central figure, the man at the crossroads, was not merely caught between capitalism and communism, as critics at the time insisted. Rivera's vision was far more expansive. He was creating a meditation on humanity's relationship with technology, nature, and power itself. It was an image of choice and responsibility, whether human innovation would be used for progress and equality, or twisted toward exploitation and domination. But Rivera's foresight in science wasn't what sealed the mural's fate. It was his politics. When Nelson Rockefeller commissioned the work for the grand lobby of Rockefeller Center, he expected a celebration of industry and progress that aligned with the family's vision of American capitalism. But what he didn't expect was Rivera's defiance. In the midst of the gleaming skyscrapers of Manhattan, Rivera dared to paint not just machines and atoms, but Lenin. Yes, Vladimir Lenin, clasping hands of workers of different races, symbolising unity across class and colour. To Rockefeller, this was not art. It was an ideological bomb detonated on the walls of his family's crown jewel. And tension boiled over. Rockefeller's team demanded Rivera remove Lenin's portrait, but Rivera refused. Instead of compromise, he doubled down, offering to include Abraham Lincoln and other American icons beside Lenin. But by then, the damage was done. To the Rockefellers, the mural had transformed from a bold artwork into a direct challenge to the very system that funded it. Some contemporary scholars have noted the presence of dragonfly-like wing patterns within Rivera's composition, an image loaded with symbolic weight. Across cultures, dragonflies embody transformation, clarity, and the ability to pierce through illusion to reach deeper truths. Their distinctive flight, often forming a figure 8, has long been associated with infinity and the eternal cycles of life. For Rivera, this may have reflected humanity's ongoing struggle to direct its own destiny. The symbolism deepens when viewed through a mythological lens. Just as dragonflies transform from water-dwelling larvae into winged beings of the air, Rivera implied that humanity itself was in the midst of a profound metamorphosis. At the mural centre, the worker seated at the controls embodied this idea, mankind breaking free from old hierarchies and emerging into a new role as the architect of its own technological and social evolution. Rivera's brilliance lay in his recognition that technology and social organisation were double-edged forces, capable of guiding humanity toward utopian fulfilment or plunging it into dystopian ruin. On the mural's left side, he portrayed the destructive capacity of capitalist technology, clouds of poisonous gas, the relentless fire of machine guns, and the warplanes that had devastated Europe during the First World War. The right side revealed the liberating promise of communist solidarity, where workers of all races joined together beneath Lenin's banner of international cooperation. Yet Rivera's vision went far deeper than the ideological battle lines of his own time. Beneath the surface, he was addressing a timeless dilemma whether human beings would harness their technological power to build a fairer, more humane society, or instead allow it to entrench divisions and magnify inequality. The classical sculptures woven into the composition reinforced this message. A Zeus stripped of his hands and a headless Caesar symbolised the passing of superstition and the downfall of authoritarian rule, displaced by a new force, the empowerment of ordinary workers through knowledge and collective action. Today's viewers find Rivera's vision carries an almost unsettling relevance. The mural's central question, whether humanity can direct technology toward collective benefit or surrender it to the service of entrenched elites, feels sharper than ever in light of contemporary crises. Environmental destruction, artificial intelligence, and widening economic inequality all symbolise the tensions he painted nearly a century ago. Scientists now want that humanity itself stands at a crossroads in confronting the emergency, much as Rivera once illustrated the fork between industrial devastation and social liberation, where he imagined workers harnessing machines for progress we now wrestle with parallel choices: renewable energy or ecological collapse, genetic engineering as cure or curse, artificial intelligence as liberation or domination. Some observers suggest that Rivera's worker, once depicted as the master of technology, has slipped into a new role, no longer in command, but toward disaster, with climate chaos looming as the ultimate consequence of failing to choose wisely. When Rivera recreated the mural in Mexico, he didn't just restore what Rockefeller had destroyed, he sharpened it into an act of defiance. Among its most striking additions was a thinly veiled personal attack on his former patrons. Rivera painted John D. Rockefeller Jr. in a compromising scene, cavorting with a woman with microscopic syphilis cells floated ominously above their heads. It was Rivera's way of indicating what he believed to be the moral rot at the heart of the capitalist elite. The syphilis imagery becomes a metaphor, suggesting that Rockefeller wealth was less a source of progress than a social disease infecting the body of society with inequality, exploitation, and decay. One of the most haunting chapters in this saga lies not in the destruction itself, but in the silence that followed. The Museum of Modern Art had the chance to save Rivera's masterpiece. Early negotiations even entertained the idea of moving Man at the Crossroads from Rockefeller Center to MoMA. But when the moment of decision came, the museum recoiled. Fear of political backlash, fear of offending the Rockefellers and their powerful allies outweighed any commitment to artistic preservation. It was an act of cultural cowardice. Rather than defend the mural as one of the most daring artistic statements of the century, MoMA chose institutional safety over integrity. And so, one of the greatest artistic visions of the 20th century was not only destroyed by hammer and chisel, but erased by complicity and silence. The original is gone, not by necessity, but by choice. Recent scholarship has suggested that the Rockefellers never truly intended for Rivera's mural to survive. The official justification for its destruction leaned heavily on technical constraints. Rivera's murals used an advanced 5-layer plaster system designed to make the work detachable and movable, a safeguard against exactly this kind of crisis. But at Rockefeller Center, his system clashed with the building's strict 3x4-inch wall requirements. That conflict was framed as a technical impossibility of preservation, a tidy excuse that cast the destruction as unfortunate but inevitable. Yet the truth is more unfortunate. If the Rockefellers had genuinely wished to preserve the mural, accommodations could have been made during the planning phase. No such effort was ever attempted. The plaster problem wasn't the reason for the mural's demise. It was the alibi, a convenient cover for what was, at its core, a political decision: censorship dressed up as architecture. In the end, Rivera's mural was not destroyed because of its plaster thickness or building codes. It was destroyed because it told truths the powerful could not stomach. At its core, Man at the Crossroads dared to imagine a future where workers controlled technology for the collective good, where racial integration and international cooperation were not ideals, but inevitabilities, and where science unlocked possibilities that transcended the grip of old hierarchies. At the mural's centre stood a figure, part deity, part everyman, suggesting that ordinary workers could wield godlike power over their own destiny. Around him, Rivera painted scenes of solidarity, including banners calling for global unity. Workers of the world, unite! So this was the real threat. Not plaster, not logistics, politics. Rivera's mural whispered a dangerous idea into the heart of capitalist Manhattan, that humanity did not need its traditional masters, religious, political, or economic, to chart its future. a symbol that humanity itself, if it chose, could break free from the old order and decide its own fate. Rivera's Man at the Crossroads endures not through its physical survival in Rockefeller Center, but through its ideas powerful enough to provoke its destruction. His recreated version in Mexico City preserves both his artistic vision and his pointed satire of the Rockefellers, ensuring that audiences continue to wrestle with the very questions that made the mural so dangerous in 1933. In the 21st century, as we face accelerating authoritarianism, staggering inequality, and existential dangers like nuclear war, ecological breakdown, and unchecked technological power, Rivera's Crossroads remain our own. The destruction of the mural thus acquires a dual meaning. It is a cautionary tale about the suppression of dissenting voices in the face of power, but also a source of inspiration. Proof that art can articulate possibilities so transformative that authority feels compelled to destroy them. Rivera's vision of empowered workers, global solidarity, and humanity's claim to its own destiny continues to resonate, reminding us that the future remains unwritten. The crossroads he painted still lies before us. The choice, as ever, is ours.